to Share the Tea Tuesdays. It is your girl V, and I have a special guest with me today, the one and only. There's only one. The one and only Dr. Faith Foreman-Hays. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing wonderfully. Yes, I'm doing great. And what about
Great. Now,
you?
not too bad. Going through a
Okay.
couple of things that I was doing. Let me get this. I get my little thing set up over here so I won't look like I'm leaning. Okay. I'm doing all right. Pretty good. Pretty good for a Tuesday. For a Tuesday. Yes, definitely. Now, I do want to give everyone a little heads up because you may hear some language that you're not used to. But I do want to let you know that Dr. Faith Foreman-Hays is my soror. Okay. I just want to let you know that. So, of course, yes, she's a member of the illustrious Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. I mean, we're not trying to go in all that, but yes. Right. We got to throw that plug out there real quick, real quick. So, of course, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I would like for you to share with the people your story of it depends on where you want to start. If you want to start at the beginning or if you want to start in the middle, but it's up to you. But share your story with us of how is it going and how long has it been? I'll start there.
Well, it's going great. I am blessed and doing extremely well.
Good.
I am now working towards 5 years in February of survivor, and not only just surviving, but thriving, honey. I call myself a thriver. And so it is going quite well. And I'm just blessed. I'm excited. Every day is a new opportunity, and I don't take it for granted. I know it
Yes.
could have been very different, and for some of my family, some of my
Mhm.
friends, it was different. And so it's just a blessing to be able to even share a story and have a story to tell. So
To tell.
I appreciate you for wanting to and using your platform to hear and share the stories of women and those who are surviving, and thriving, and still in the fight.
Definitely, definitely. So it's about to be 5 years. Now, we're going to tell you later why the number five is so important. Okay.
Mhm.
We'll just remember that. Why is the number five so important? Because people hear me say, oh, I can't wait to five. So just remember five. We'll talk about that later. So, what year were you diagnosed and did you discover your own mass or how did that start?
Okay, wonderful question. So I was diagnosed in the summer of uh, 2017. I actually say that I got breast cancer for my birthday because my birthday is in July and I always celebrate the entire month. I usually go out of the country. And so on July 13th is the actual day, 7 days, 7 to 8 days before my birthday is when I actually got the diagnosis. I
Okay.
had gone in for a routine, my well woman exam earlier, probably in that maybe May that year, May or June.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my doctor said, well, feel something there. But, I had had a history of in the past having cysts and having, biopsies, and nothing had ever come up as being anything malignant. Everything was a benign cyst throughout my, adult, middle, young adult life. So,
Okay.
but my general practitioner being my doctor for probably almost 25 years. She recently retired. So we kind of grew up together. African American
Okay.
female. She said, let's go and you need to have your mammogram as usual. So I think I was just going to get that well woman exam, get the mammogram. And then on the mammogram, that's when they said, okay, so there's something there. We need to look at that a little bit more. And then things kind of progressed from there, from getting a mammogram to actually getting a biopsy and just waiting on the results. Meanwhile, I'm living life, moving on because that's just who I am. I was on a plane headed to go to Hood, actually one of my doctoral candidates, who is a
Oh,
soror actually, and I was going to participate in her graduation, and I was on the plane with my phone still on, waiting for them to close the jetway, and the phone rang, and it had Kelsey Siebold as the came up on the caller ID. And me being a healthcare practitioner, I knew that's what that meant. So when I saw that come up, and it was the breast doctor, the breast specialist, She
Mhm.
said, "Do you have a minute?" And so I was sitting on the plane
Oh my
by the
goodness.
by myself, just with other people on the plane. And I said, "Sure, I do." And once she says that I've been, in healthcare. I started my career as a nurse. I knew enough to know that it probably was not good news. And she told me, "Well, I have to tell you that it is cancerous." And so that's kind of how it started. I got off the plane at my destination. I went to the hotel, and my now husband, but then fiance, was coming up later. I had to be there earlier, but we were making a little trip out of it. And so I told him once we got to the room, and but I still participated in graduation. I still did everything that I needed to do, and then came back to Houston and followed up with my doctor as soon as I got back in town.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
I I don't even I don't even I can't even understand how you were able to even function after receiving the news just not minutes ago. I wouldn't be able to function. I mean, oh my goodness. That, but
Yeah.
the power of women is something that I don't think a lot of people understand, that we receive news and you don't even realize that there's something going on with us, and we just keep on going on throughout the day.
Yeah, that's just kind of how we're built. And I just think for me, I do that silent prayer and say, "Hey, I believe that whatever you do, if you show up, God is already there." And I just
Mm,
said, "Hey, give me the strength, God, to do what I need to do." And there's no option. What would collapsing, what would that have done for me? It would not have allowed me to get through that and do that for my student. And then just for myself, I needed to be able to do that. So I immediately hit the ground when I got back in town. And my first approach is always to get more information. That's the scientist
right.
in me. I work in public health, so I've got to find out more. So that was really my goal, was to get back. I know what the breast doctor told me, but I needed to get more information. And so until I
Hmm.
get more information, I'm not going to invest a lot of, I think, emotion in it, because I need to know the information. So I think that's what helps me. And that's kind of probably a coping strategy that I have. It's just, let's find out more, and then we can act upon it.
Act upon it. Now, you mentioned that you work in public health, and of
Mhm.
course, you are a doctor. Can you share a little bit about your professional career?
Oh, absolutely. I started my career as an LVN, and I'm very proud of that. And I have maintained my LVN license for over 30 years. I became an LVN at the age of 19. And I
Wow.
just knew, yes, my family was a family of healthcare providers, nurses. My aunt is
Okay.
a registered nurse, my cousin. So we have quite a few healthcare practitioners in our family. And my grandmother, who we just celebrated over the weekend, was a healthcare provider and, a funeral director. She owned a funeral home. And so I had
Wow.
just been around, people who were caregivers and kind of
Hmm.
servant in a way. Um, I went on to get a doctorate in public health, but I got a bachelor's degree in sociology from Texas Southern University. So I'm an HBCU grad. And then I went on and got a master's in a doctorate in public health from the University of Texas. So it was just important for me to give back to the community, and to really, I think, more importantly, for people to be able to have health services. I thought it was really not. Um, humane, actually inhumane, for a person not to have a healthy life just as a basic right. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of what led me into public health versus going into private industry, like working for, a big corporation, but working in public service, because there were so many health disparities, and there are many health disparities in breast cancer, specifically among, women of color. And
Yeah.
so I just have had a wonderful career in public health, and it really has led me to be able to make an impact in a lot of communities, and really globally. I've done great work globally, and I'm very proud of that.
Okay, that is wonderful. That is wonderful, because you mentioned a little bit that that's the science in you. You
Mhm.
needed to find out more information of what's going on, instead of just becoming overwhelmed like some people. I'm gonna raise my hand because that's me. But you said I need to figure out what is going on. Let me get more information. One of the health disparities. What do you feel? being in that field and then also experiencing breast cancer, being on that journey, what do you feel is a health disparity that maybe you experienced or you've seen someone else or heard of someone that experienced one?
Well, I will tell you one of the major one, and it wasn't so much that I experienced it, but throughout my career, and as I have gone to get numerous mammograms every year.
Hmm.
Sometimes I had biopsies, ultrasounds, and that was the access to mammography, access to more significant test. Prior to affordable care, you would have to pay an additional $50 copay to get a 3D mammography. And many African American women have dense breast. And so if you're not getting a 3D, now I think they even have 4D, 5D mammography. Um, you are probably often going to miss a lump, maybe on a mammogram. So there are other things that I think access to mammography, screening, and early diagnosis is probably the most significant disparity. I think that women of color and women who don't have a lot of resources
Hmm.
face, I think, as the greatest disparity. I think the other disparity is oftentimes women of color, our chief complaints, our questioning is not taken seriously. So we oftentimes are told, "Oh, it's nothing," or "It doesn't appear to be anything," but the woman may be still experiencing pain, or even have just that what I call it, that people say my first mind or my gut told me to follow up on something. But if you don't have access and you don't have a healthcare practitioner that looks like you or that's going to take you seriously, then that's going to also create a barrier for you. You may not be diagnosed until a much later time. And that earlier diagnosis is often your key to a cure. And so
Right.
I would say access and the fact that the health concerns of women of color have to be taken seriously.
Definitely, definitely. There was a segment this morning. I don't know if you watched Good Morning
I
America, but
did.
okay.
I did.
And they've been doing a variety of segments. But this morning they were talking about being able to, like, one lady, she met a young lady that had issues with transportation, just trying to get to the treatment place and then coming back. And she became a volunteer with American Cancer Society just to be able to transport the patient or the client from one place to another to get to where they needed to be. And to me, you really don't think about that until you're in that position and you notice, like, okay, this is what's going on. Because in the rural areas, they don't have
Mhm.
hardly what the big cities have. So that does definitely make it. And thank you for taking the time to explain that, because I don't really think people think about the health disparities, and sometimes they feel like, oh no, everybody has access,
Oh
um,
no.
and that's not necessarily the case. And then sometimes, even if you have access, you may not feel comfortable, like you explained, talking to your doctor about what's going on, or even if the doctor's even listening to you.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely. I think it's yeah, we're taught. I think I would tell people, and I've been a health educator for a living for years, and I would tell people that time to kind of uh kind of dumb down or become very shy is not in your doctor's office. I used to go to
right.
the my doctor with a list of things written down. So write them down, put it on the note section in your phone. If you have questions, that's the time to ask the doctor. If you don't
Mhm.
ask, they won't stay in the room very long because they're trying to get to the next patient. And so you have to be empowered. That's your one shot, and that's your opportunity to ask those questions. Don't second guess yourself. Don't think you're being overly dramatic, because many women have heart attacks and other things that happen to them because they didn't feel quite right, but they
Right.
didn't want to be a bother, and they didn't want someone to think that they were being having a panic attack, which is oftentimes how women are treated, that you're having
Mhm.
something that's psychosomatic anxiety, and that may be true, but we won't know if we don't check it out. So I say
Right.
be your own best advocate. And you're definitely correct. American Cancer Society, organizations such as that, Sisters Network Inc., Susan G. Komen, there are some great programs that they have that are available. I can tell you that when I was first diagnosed, and I'm grateful and I thank God that I didn't have to use any of the services that American Cancer Society offered me. I will say that they did offer me, as soon as you are entered into the cancer registry, you
Mm-hmm.
are given really good access to um, you know, things that you wouldn't even think of, such as transportation. American Cancer Society, as a resource, actually reached out to me by phone, and
Oh,
they asked me if I needed someone to come and clean my home. Did I
oh,
need,
really? Okay.
yes, this is something, and this was in 2017, but someone called me, and the person that contacted me was so insistent. She was like, "Are you sure we can have someone come in and clean a couple of days? You know, there are different services." And I said, "You can send me the information, but I'm blessed and I thank you so much. I do not need those types of services, but, please, pass those on to people who actually do." So
Right.
there are resources, but I think, what, as we said before, if you don't know, knowledge is a great, or lack of knowledge is a great barrier. And if you don't know who to call upon, that's why it's good to have forums such as this. It may never happen, and I pray that it never happens to any of the viewers. But if it does, or someone you love, you will know to be able to refer them to the Sisters Network Inc., where you can go. It's the only African American, or the largest African American servicing breast cancer organization, or American Cancer Society, who has just a wealth of resources, and Komen, Susan G. Komen, where you will also be able to get certain things like rides to, getting your treatment, and then also assistance in getting to pay for a mammogram, which costs about $200. So,
Right.
um, lots of resources out there, and a lot of ways to be a help, be of assistance, to be of service, to volunteer. If you're blessed not to have to be one of 8 women who will get breast cancer
Right.
in her
And that,
lifetime.
and it's always good to give back, to reach back, because then people ask me all the time, what made you come up with share the tea? And I just learned so much information. And when you learn so much information that you didn't know before, you're like, whoa, what, somebody else probably didn't even know this. So it needs to be shared with people, because if you don't know, you wouldn't know. And just like when you mentioned Sisters Network, I didn't know anything about Sister to Sister Network until Sigma Gamma Rho had partnered with them. So I didn't really know about that organization until it was brought to, and I was like, oh, okay, because that's a good resource for you to be able to connect with someone else and share that information. Because I've also learned that there are some organizations out there that are able to provide you a like finances, like they can help you
Hmm.
and send you, it may only be like $200 or something, or it may be like a gas card to help you with transportation. But those are things that is not really easily accessible to the public. You don't hear this on the news. You don't normally see it in a newspaper.
Right. Right.
Right. So
You
it's
won't. Yeah, absolutely. Those things are so important. I
mhm,
think that having that access and helping to educate women and families, because when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, your whole
mhm,
family is diagnosed with breast cancer in a way,
right.
because you will need that support, depending on your treatment process. And I'm a very self-sufficient person, but I will tell you, I went to a lot of my treatments alone, but that was just by choice. I also had about, I would say, someone went with me maybe 7 or 8 of the times, and then the other 8 times I wanted to go alone, because that was a 3-hour time that I could be by myself, and once I got the hang of it, just be there. But and I could drive myself. But everybody's treatment story or treatment journey is not the same, and so
Mhm,
someone may need that person to pick them up, to take them there. They may be severely nauseous
right.
during the treatment. So there are a variety of journey stories and types. So I think being able to access those important resources um, it's a major barrier, and it's a major thing for anybody going through any type of cancer, but particularly breast cancer.
Right, definitely, definitely. So, what stage was your breast cancer?
Wonderful question. So my cancer was diagnosed at a stage 2A, and I had what we would call, I call it basic breast cancer because 70 to 80% of women have the type of breast cancer that I had. So if
Oh, okay.
breast cancer could be on a continuum, I said, okay, I don't like to be basic, but I had not, I had the most basic and the most, I would say, common, and that is invasive ductal carcinoma. So you might see it as IDC. Um, there are different types of breast cancer,
Hmm.
but my breast cancer was one that was in the duct, but it also the invasive part means that it had gone outside of the duct into the breast tissue around it, not outside of the breast,
Uh-huh.
but inside of the breast, but outside of the duct.
Okay.
So, and that is pretty much the type of cancer 70 to 80% of women will get the invasive ductal carcinoma.
Hmm. Okay. So
And
when
there are
you
other types of breast cancer. Particularly, I think it's important to note that African American women have a higher prevalence of breast cancers types such as triple negative and inflammatory breast cancer. I did not have that. I did not have triple negative. I did not have inflammatory, but I did have the most, I would say, common type. If that's helpful to anyone.
okay, that is helpful. And what when they say triple negative, what exactly does that mean for
Well, there
people that
are,
just
okay, so without getting too scientific, because I'm not an oncologist or a breast geneticist, but I will tell you that I had the type of breast cancer having the IDC. It was invasive ductal carcinoma that was estrogen positive, progesterone negative. So when you hear
okay.
triple negative, that means that, for example, if we had to think about what may have caused, we can't say for sure, but what
Hmm.
may have caused or increased my risk for um, breast cancer was estrogen, because estrogen, it was fed by estrogen.
Okay.
Got it? So that's why it would be estrogen positive, but progesterone negative. It could have been progesterone positive. That would have been a different diagnosis.
Different time.
So if
Okay.
something is triple negative, that means all of those markers or the markers for that would be negative. So
Okay.
I think if your viewers want to know more, that's definitely gets deeper into the science and the oncology of
Hmm.
breast cancer, but those are marked differences and different diagnoses. And I think what's interesting to share is that you don't know as much as you could possibly know about breast cancer until you're diagnosed with it. I
Right.
know you can remember your, journey as well. But you learn your stage, your type, if it's fast, rapid growing, if it's not, they have different scores. The tumors have different
Yes.
scores. So you learn probably more than you want to know about your type of breast cancer. So it would be difficult to compare it to someone else's. But I
Okay.
think there are lots of resources. And I got a lot of my information, not just from my care providing team, but American Cancer Society. That was one of the first places that I looked to look at the different types, to look at my type, to read about the treatment possibilities, just
Okay.
different things based on how I was staged. And that was very helpful to me. That gave me a great sense of comfort just because
Yeah,
that's my kind of style. Read about it, try to be anticipatory, and also know what questions to ask.
definitely. And they do
Mhm,
have a lot of information on their
mhm,
website. If you take the time to research, you do receive a lot of information through there. So that way you get a better understanding of what's going on. And I really feel that it helps you to prepare what questions to
mhm.
ask your doctor. Because when you're going into your follow-ups or just going to meet your oncologist, it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? How did my question was, how did I get this? How long I've had it?
Mhm.
You have all these questions and they're trying
Right.
to tell you your treatment plan and what we're going to do to help you. So that it is it can be overwhelming, but you
Yeah.
do learn a lot of information.
Yeah. It was
And
very
that's,
helpful. It was
yes,
very helpful to me. Yeah, it was.
it is definitely very helpful. So there was a question, and it went straight by me just like that. Okay, it may come back to me. I'm gonna forget. So almost 5 years. Let's talk a little bit about that. Can you tell them what's so significant about the number five?
Well, for most and for many, I won't say most, many cancers, the year five really signifies a kind of a milestone in your cancer journey. I know for breast cancer, oftentimes they will tell you that at year five, because most of us are taking some type of after cancer treatment drug of sorts,
Hmm.
something that is, in my case, I take a hormone um, inhibitor that you may have heard of tamoxifen. I don't take that, but if I was a younger woman, I probably would have taken tamoxifen. So what you take is based on where you are in your breast cancer kind of journey and age and other things. But
Okay.
for me, it marks the time where um, I have been cancer free for 5 years, with the hope that the likelihood of it returning would be less likely. Also, for me, probably the most significant thing is that the medication that I currently take, the hope is I will not have to take it anymore after 5 years. And so
Okay. Good.
that's what it means for me. I will tell you that I just recently, where I get my cancer care, they have come up with a way to diagnose and a way to find cancers through a study that will also tell me whether or not I will need to take the medicine for five, because some of us have to take it for 10 years. So I'm looking forward to finding out whether I have to take the medication for an additional 5 years, or if I can truly stop taking the after what I call my after cancer pill in February. So for different types of cancers, it's different markers, but usually it means that you have been on for breast cancer, you may have been on a medication that you've been taking, and after that 5 years, you
Hmm.
may not have to take that medication anymore. I want to add this though too, because I think this is so important in many of the women that have, once they've been diagnosed with breast cancer and they know that I'm a survivor, or someone has asked them to, reach out to me, or, I've said, hey, call me.
Hmm.
The most important thing that I can tell a woman who enters into this journey is be prepared that sometimes when you go to see your oncologist or your doctor, things are going to change. So, sometimes we can hear something, and when we get to the doctor's office, it changes and we get super upset. I learned very early from my doctor and other women by being in a support group at my cancer care center. Things are going to change. So, if, for example, they tell me I have to take the drug for an additional 5 years, I'll be prepared for that, because sometimes things will change. I've known people go in and their diagnosis in terms of their stage. So that's why a lot of times the doctor won't tell you initially they can't stage it. They need to do a little bit more pathology or whatever to stage something, because the stage may change based on the size, the grade, type, all of those things are important. So just know that sometimes when you go into the doctor, especially for women who are on this journey right now, know that sometimes the information that they tell you when you get there, it may change. So
It may
I've known
change.
people go in and they tell them you won't have to have radiation. And then 2 weeks later, they come back and say, well, we are going to need to do radiation. And some people I know, rightfully so, have been devastated by that. But if that's what they're telling you, you can always get a second opinion. And I would say you don't have to be suspect of it, because, things change in how they look at pathology.
Right.
How they type and grade. Some cancers are fast growing cancers, some cancers are slow growing cancers, based on the typology, and the genetics and pathology of the tumor.
Mm,
and also how if did it affect your lymph nodes. There are a lot of different things, and so I think that's the one thing that my heart aches for women a lot of time when they come to me and they say, well, they said this and now they're telling me that. So I often try to tell when someone calls me and says, hey, the doctor said I need to go back, or I've been diagnosed here, and I say, I make myself available to them. But the number one thing I tell them, do not be surprised. Prepare yourself for even one thing that they told you that might be different when you
mm,
get there,
right.
so that it doesn't devastate you, or you don't think that you cannot trust your care team, because things do change,
Hmm.
along the treatment, journey sometimes.
And I appreciate you saying that because that is a great tip. Um, just going into the appointment, we tend to start thinking, I don't want to say negative, but at
Mhm,
times we start to worry if my scan's going to look right, if, what
mhm,
did my blood labs say, or, we start to think about all these different things. And then before you know it, they're checking your blood pressure. Oh, your blood pressure is extremely high. Well, it's because I'm here. But, I think it's really important
mhm,
to be prepared
mhm,
for any adjustments that come. One thing that you said earlier, you said support groups.
mhm.
So when you were doing your treatment, you joined a support group at your cancer center, or was it off site somewhere?
No, it was actually at my cancer center, and I would say, I'm here in Houston, as in Houston, Texas, and my cancer treatment was not done at MD Anderson. Like, a lot of people will go to MD Anderson because they are in Houston, or they come to world class MD Anderson. But I also went to a world class cancer center at Kelsey Siebel, and I had a really great cancer team, and it's still my team. Um, During that very first treatment, and I always tell people that was the longest day in my life, because
Mm,
the cancer, your chemotherapy is about 3 to 4 hours anyway. But on that first one, you have to meet with everybody. You have to meet with the pharmacist. You have to go over all of the cancer drugs that you're going to get in chemotherapy. And you have to meet with a lot of different people. And one of the people in my cancer center that I met with was the social worker. That person comes and talks to us, talks to the family, talks to you, and they let me know about the support group. They don't force you. They don't, um, there's no pressure, but they're just letting you know everything that's available to you. So I was blessed to be in a place where they had about, pretty much everything. Everyone came by to my suite to talk to me. And one of the things that they offered to me was a support group that met. Um, Once monthly, and it was survivors and those who were currently in treatment, including their spouse or significant other, or their caregiver, whoever they're the person they wanted to bring with them, if they wanted to bring someone. So I was blessed to have that. Um, Support, and be able really to, you could go and say nothing, or you could go and listen. And um, I also knew a lot of other women, I can say, on my in my organization at the city health department. Unfortunately, there were a lot of women that I was especially close to, who were survivors, and so I drew a lot of strength from them, and we happened to go to the same place because we probably had the same insurance. And so they were a great resource for me. But I think support groups are wonderful. They have them online, especially now with COVID. I also participated in something called ALAC, which is Active Living After Cancer, because I was a very athletic person. I'm still very athletic. And it was important to me after my cancer treatment to remain physically fit and to continue to focus on fitness, and to know what I could do without causing myself to have, um, increased potential of lymphedema and those kinds of things. So I think support is very good. And
mm-hmm.
if you don't have it in your community, reach out online. And if you have access to a smartphone, you don't even need a laptop. If you just have access to your smartphone, you can join um, a support group from wherever you are, if you have a smartphone.
Definitely. And
Mhm,
Dr. Faith Foreman Hayes, that was one of my, I don't want to say downfall, but I'm going to say it
mhm,
was. and because they did the same like you mentioned, but I didn't reach out and take it. I just said no, I'm okay, I'm fine. And as I look back, I really should have gone through some counseling, or some therapy, and being in those support groups. And I think what it did for me was, since I work in that capacity, I felt like, okay, I don't need that, it's okay, I know what to do. But yeah, I regret that even to this day. And my husband even asked me, you should have taken that, so that way you can be able to have some release, because
Yes.
it
Yes.
is a lot for you to go through, um, as a woman, and then it's a lot for your husband or spouse or whomever partner to go through as their caretaker, and they're watching you go through these changes. Um,
Very true. And
yeah,
it's not too late. So I encourage you. This is the greatness of, and you know this as a care provider, the greatness of being able to, you can go and be in support anytime. We actually still have our support group. It's ongoing because people unfortunately are still being diagnosed and they're still on the treatment process.
right.
And the thing about cancer, you are never done with cancer. You're done with cancer in terms of your time frames and your mile markers, your milestones. But
Hmm.
I always talk with my oncologist and say, you are the one dude I want to break up with. And he said, unfortunately, the best I can offer you is one time seeing you once a year, which is what I'm working on. I'm almost there. After I make my 5 year, I won't have to see him, but annually, right? Um, but I think that the one thing that is still important is that support group is still available, and the
Hmm.
support is still there. And it's those of us that are very strong and always there for others that look back. And I didn't go to the support group every month, Vernelia. I didn't go. I went occasionally. I went sometimes to support other people, but I knew that it was there. I knew that if I had a question, I may not have said a lot all the time, but I was. Um, Listening. It was
Hmm.
very important because there are so many things that I don't think people are aware of. Your journey is almost a lifetime journey because cancer changes you. It changes you
Yes.
physically. And it's not so much the cancer that changes you, it's the treatment of cancer that
Hmm.
changes you. I was
Definitely.
feeling great. I mean, not to make light of it, but I was running and doing all kinds of things. I will say that I was struggling a little bit to run. So, whatever that means, I was getting tired more, but I was feeling pretty good. I wouldn't have known it was there without the mammography.
Hmm.
Um, so, I think that, having had cancer treatment, there are a lot of side effects. There are a lot of things that you still have to deal with over time. And I've
Yeah.
not met one person that does not have some residual physical and for some mental effects of cancer treatment. I still
Hmm.
deal with things 5 years later that were as a result of my cancer treatment. I have really bad neuropathy. And most of the time, people get neuropathy from being a diabetic, but I got severe neuropathy from the Paxil Taxol, the last I had 16 chemo treatments, and I got severe neuropathy in my hands and my feet for over those last 12 treatments. So
Right.
much so that my doctor at the end, I was barely, it was hard for me to walk in terms of because my toes were numb and
Hmm.
tingling. And he said, well, you can have disability. And I said, I hate to say it like this, but I'm like, do you know how much money I make? Do you know what I do? Disability would be a way bad thing. And plus, I don't want to be on disability.
Right.
So
Right.
he said that it would go away, that it was a common side effect, specifically among people of color from that drug. And I'm happy to
Hmm.
say that I pretty much have probably, it's about 95% gone in my hands and about 80 plus percent gone in my feet. It's worse when I wake up in the morning. So I can't jump up out of bed like I used to. I have to kind of let my feet just kind of wake up, and I don't run as well. So that's why I'm an avid walker now, because I'm off balance when I run. So, but I was a lifetime runner. So it's just things that you still deal with after cancer that, people don't have any idea that you may be dealing with, because the strong, we project and we muscle through. But
Mm-hmm.
cancer treatment is something that you may have to deal with the side effects of for a lifetime. So I would say, it's never too late to get into a support group or into some type of support, and just go and listen. I guarantee you somebody's experiencing the same thing as you.
Definitely.
If you had chemotherapy, I know for me, my short-term memory is not that good anymore. Sometimes I struggle with words that I used to know. It's getting a little bit better, but sometimes I'm looking for a word and I know the word, but I have to substitute another word in there that's a synonym because I can't get the word. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lifetime, kind of thing.
That is true. And I appreciate you saying that too, because um, chemo brain is horrible.
Yes.
It's 100% horrible. I really feel like it's almost like you're trying to say something and it's there, but it's not coming out your mouth.
Hmm.
There were so many times my husband and my sister, they would finish sentences for me because I couldn't get the rest of it out. And after a while, you just kind of like, okay, let me just stop. Let me just slow down,
Hmm.
and just kind of regroup. But those after effects of treatments, it takes a toll. And I don't think people really understand that. Someone did mention in one of my other podcast segments that it would be good to just have a segment on the afterlife, or not afterlife, but the after treatments of cancer, what all takes place. And because some people are like, oh, you beat it. Yeah, that's true, but I'm still dealing with these other issues that you may not be aware of.
Yeah,
um
and that's the beauty of a support group,
yeah.
because when you go to any type of support group or online, people, they will know what you're talking about. They will be
Mhm.
able to say, this happened to me, and some of them will be able to give you some great tips on, well, this is what I did. This is how I was able to handle that. And so, that's a beneficial thing. And I've even thought myself, I say a couple of times a year, I never went to any type of therapy for my, being diagnosed with cancer and having to kind of deal with the impact of that.
Right.
I dealt with a lot of it, on my own, having the support group. But you know how people go into therapy, and I'm thinking, sometimes you may need to have some conversations about what just happened to me, over these
Yeah.
last 5 years, because it is a journey. And I just kept going. I worked the entire time. I did take FMLA during my surgeries, when I
Okay.
physically, but for chemotherapy, I scheduled all my chemotherapies. I mean, I was working cancer treatment like a job, right? I'm
Right.
like,
I
this is
figured
how the
you were.
schedule is going to roll. We're going to take chemotherapy on Friday, and then we'll be off the weekend so that we can recover. Little did I
Mhm.
know that it doesn't really bother you when you first get the therapy. It's around day 5 when you hit the wall and you
Right.
feel like, all the life is out of you.
Mhm.
So um it's all of those things. It's almost like post-traumatic stress disorder, where I feel like I didn't really think about it while I was going through it, because I think if I had thought too much about it, I may not have been able to do it. But
Mm.
post that, when I look back on it and I look back at some of the pictures that I've been sharing a little bit on my Facebook, when I look back at some of the pictures, I remember how I felt that day. Right. I
Mhm.
remember what was going on in that world that day. I started chemotherapy like August 4th. I went and got the port. And then August 6th, I started my treatment like 2 days later, and Harvey hit here in Houston. So it was flooded, and I could not get out of my home. And I was so worried because I knew I had to get my chemotherapy, and I'm very regimented. I'm like, I need to stay on time because I need to finish by December. I mean, I had big plans.
Right.
And so it was really stressing me out. But luckily, I was able to get my treatment. But there was 5 days of flooding in Houston. It was the
Mhm.
most horrific flood. It was, nationwide. I think most people know about the flood, the Harvey flood. But I
Harvey.
was
Yeah.
going through cancer treatment during the Harvey flood. So amazingly enough, I still made it. But
Right. Oh,
Sometimes I feel like I do need to talk to somebody about the whole the whole journey.
the whole journey. Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you ever do journaling or write down how you just little notes here and there? May not be full journaling, but
I did. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was full journaling. I would say for me, I did a lot of picture, like almost like taking photos. So photo journaling for me,
okay.
and I
Okay.
have those. So I think I'm going to do something with that. But that was helpful to me. Um, of every treatment, I have a photo journal of everything that I was going through at that time. So when
Mhm.
my hair started to come out after the second treatment, I have photo journal of that, the shaving my head with my hairstylist, what we did, having drains in. I took pictures of myself, pictures that would be probably horrific to to others, or they may be helpful to someone going through, to know the little tricks I would do to make sure I would conceal the drains. I think the first time I went outside was to see Black Panther, and people didn't know I went to the movies, but I had drains from surgery under my
Wow.
blouse. So it's just I did a lot of photo journaling, and I have a blessing jar, which I always have had a blessing jar most of my life. And in my blessing jar, I always write little um, notes, or what I'm thankful for and a blessing on these little note cards that came with the jar. And now I've just made up the cards because I've used all those. But I write those down, and I wrote a lot of that during that time.
Oh, that's neat to have a
Mhm.
blessing jar. So you
Mhm.
and these are tips that can help you cope. So with blessing jars, with writing or picture journaling, support groups, anything that can definitely help you throughout your journey. That's really important. I noticed that you mentioned that you were still working 16 rounds of chemo
Mhm.
and you're still working, still focused on, okay, I got to do this and set this up. Oh my goodness. See, that's what we're talking about. Women, we're so strong minded. We really are. And it's like we put on capes every day. Every day we put on capes and we have to remind ourselves we got to take care of ourselves. We really
Yes.
do.
Yeah,
We really
absolutely. And I don't necessarily advise it, but here's what I say: do whatever works for you. For
do.
me, that worked because it allowed me to have that focus time. I was,
Yeah.
a lot of times you can be here because, of course, my husband works. And so the days that he needed to stay, he stayed. But for the most part, I was really, able to do it. Home, I would. Actually, I was going to work, and it was my director that said, you don't have to come in. I think you should just stay at home after you have your treatments, and maybe you come in on the off week, because I was doing treatments every 2 weeks, every
Oh,
other week. So on the off weeks, I would go into the office, and then we worked out a process where I would stay home after I would have um, chemotherapy. Because here's the thing: because I am who I am in my mind, I was doing a lot better than I was doing a lot worse than I thought I was doing, right?
oh,
So I thought I was really killing it. But when I was barely able to kind of move around, and chemotherapy, because it takes your immune system down and your hemoglobin so low, it makes you have difficulty breathing, right? You
mhm.
can't walk long distances. And so it would take me a long time to give it. I thought I was killing it. I thought I was just doing it, but it would take me a long time. And then doing my makeup, I noticed a couple of times, I was like, well, you didn't blend that quite well. Or my assistant would say, okay, are you feeling well? So just things that I'm thinking I don't see, but others were seeing, you really probably need to stay at home, just
Right.
because you know most people don't realize when your immune system is taken down to zero, which is chemo. What is chemo is doing is that it also, for me, it created a cough. I don't
Mm,
know if that happened to you, but I had a constant slight cough all of the time, and constant nasal drainage, because it's almost like it's like the immune system of a baby, right? So
mm,
constant
right.
nasal drainage, a cough, and shortness of breath in trying to walk distances towards the end there, when you've had so many chemo treatments. So we muscle through, but don't be ashamed. Don't be that superwoman where you say, um, I just got to do it. But Do your process, what works for you. My journey is my journey. Your journey is your journey. We can share things that will help us and to empower and support one another, but I
Right.
would not dare tell you how to do something,
Mm-hmm.
how this should work for you. What you will, if you ask me how I approach something, I will be happy to share it, but I think every woman's journey is her own journey. I found great, so, kind of solitude in being able to pray my way through. I praised a lot of the time, and I always tried to think of what was happening that was good. And I knew, I will tell you, the moment I knew I could make it was, and I talked to my oncologist about this on my last visit, and that was because I'm a nurse, I know what goes on that chart.
Mm,
And so
right.
when I walked into the my first chemotherapy session, and I saw, they write, the nurses, they write on the chart, and the doctor has written the order, and there is a reason for the chemotherapy. Like, it'll say why, I don't know if it says reason or, purpose or whatever. But I saw on my chart, when my doctor ordered chemotherapy for me, he wrote the reason, cure.
Oh,
CURE. When I tell you, I could pass the collection plate right now. When
oh
I
my
saw
goodness.
he wrote the reason for my chemotherapy was cure, and being a nurse, I knew that it could have said to make comfortable,
Mm,
palliative,
mm-hmm.
um, to, slow growth. It could have said a lot of different things. But when he wrote for me cure,
Sure.
I was like, oh, you can't tell me nothing now. Let's get it popping
Yes.
in here. I'm
Yes.
on it, right? I'm on it,
I
because
love that.
those things make a difference. And he and I spoke about that. And he said, Faith, that is something that, thank you for telling me that, because I stopped writing um uh, custodial or palliative or other things on there. He said I use words now like slow growth, or something that will give the patient more empowerment, because as soon as they see something that may not mean they're going to survive this, they
Right.
your body and your mind turns into, I'm not going to survive this.
Right. Right.
So that was very important to me. When it said cure, I was like, that's all you got to say. Say less. Let's move on.
Say less. We're gonna name it and claim it. And
Name
here
it
we
and move
are.
on. And that's what
Yes.
we did.
Wonderful. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time because
Oh no, we're
I,
good.
I know we get to talking, but what is what is a word what is one word that you would use to describe yourself? Looking back over everything, what is one word that you say, this is me?
I would say the one word for my cancer journey was grateful. Probably was is my biggest descriptor,
Hmm.
and a praiser, because for me that was really what I focused on. And I have a good friend, her name is Cynthia. She's not on Facebook, but her name is Cynthia, and she told me, focus on the healer and not the disease. She told me that very early on. She said, focus on the healer and not the situation. And I did that. I tried to do that. One of the things, I know some people will ask, why did this happen to me? And some of my family members said, well, why is this happening to you? I never asked that. I never asked that, because the health professional in me said that 1 in 8 women, I taught this, so I know this, 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in her lifetime. So I never said, why me? I'm that 1 in 8. It was, so that part didn't really shake me. I didn't say, why me? I know that God doesn't give you what you can't carry. I was selected to do this. And so I said, I'm going to just praise my way through it. If you were not a praiser, if you were not a person that was going to be positive, I really didn't let you into the concentric circle.
Mm,
You could be there for me, but I didn't want a lot of crying and a lot of emotion that you were not believing for this to be a healing and a cure for me. So I kind of kept that at a distance, because I was grateful that he wrote cure on my chart.
in your chart. That's it.
So every day I try to operate from a moment of gratitude. That does not mean that I did not have the days where I was so week that my husband had to come and get me out of the shower because the hot water, just was overwhelming in terms of steam, and my immune system was so low. I was so weak. My, hemoglobin and things were down to below 7, and they won't give you chemo. So I was working on trying to eat steaks and do all these kinds of things that I don't normally do to raise those numbers. But there was never a time where I was thinking, why is this happening to me? It was more like, okay, this has happened to me and I've got to fight my way out of it. And I'm
Find my way.
grateful that I have the opportunity to fight, and I have
Yeah,
the access, the resources, and the people to support me in the fight.
in
So
the fight.
gratitude was really, really good, because I lost one of my first cousins who was also my soror to breast cancer, my dad's sister's daughter, at
Okay.
the age of 40. She died
Oh,
of breast
no.
cancer. So, and I have two other aunts who died of cancer on my dad's side. So for me, I knew that I was blessed. I was blessed to find it. I was blessed to, for it to be found at an early stage. And so I was just grateful. I was grateful. And I just had to keep going, just keep
Definitely.
going.
I love that. I love that. To keep going. Two things. And I heard you mention it as far as being active.
Mhm.
Have to keep moving, regardless of what was going on, just to keep walking or even just to do a little bit of exercise. But also your lifestyle change. Did you feel like you had to change what you were eating or drinking or anything of that nature? And I know food and exercise kind of go hand in hand, but
Mhm. Yes. Well, one of the things that I can say that was beneficial to me, and it's kind of just like if a
mhm,
woman gets pregnant or something, if you're already a fit person and you're in pretty good shape, when you have to go through something like this, for me, and based on what my oncologist told me, it makes your treatment, somewhat better in terms of just kind of how you do. Um, I maybe didn't experience some things that might have experienced had I not been in good shape. So I was actually a runner. I was physically, I've just always been very athletic throughout my lifetime, and a
right.
pretty fairly decent eater. I do like sweets, but I think that that's in moderation. And so, what I will say is that my doctor always recommends more of a Mediterranean type diet. I will share that that is probably the missing component, and I'm looking forward to working in that space when I retire in the next year, and that is nutrition and cancer. Because that was the one person that did not come and talk to me on that first day one. They had
Mhm.
no nutritionist for um, cancer patient that cancer, people who were going through treatment at that time. My understanding is now my cancer center does have a nutritionist, because I kept
Good.
putting that on every one of my evaluations. I would have loved to have talked to a nutritionist
Mhm.
after my cancer, or while I was when I was finished with my treatment. um, my ALAC, active living after cancer program, did teach a lot about nutrition, and it was a fitness program, Vernelia, so I actually went into that. And that was a 12-week program through MD Anderson Cancer Center that I
Okay.
signed up for. It was free. It did not cost me anything. And it's for any type of cancer, not just breast cancer. You just have to be a cancer survivor,
Okay.
and it's called Active Living After Cancer. And I am now on their advisory board, and it was very good. I went on Saturday mornings. They do have them through the week, but it worked better for my schedule after that time to go on Saturday mornings, and I would go on Saturday mornings. You do activity and you learn a lot about how you live actively after cancer. Um, they taught us about lymphedema, what can increase your chances. I was blessed. I only had a little, and I still have a little um, uh, minor swelling, not very much where you would not notice, but I, of course, know because it's my body on my left side, which is where my cancer was. But there were some opportunities for me to be fit, and I took advantage of those just because that's just my normal strategy, my normal way of living. So if you have something like that in your locale, or an opportunity to do that, I know that there are some ALAC online as well, Active Living After Cancer online. Again, it's a free opportunity for you to do a 12-week course with physical activity, effort, education, nutrition education, and just, stress, mental health, everything that you would want to know so that you can maintain an active life after cancer.
Definitely. Oh, so
Yeah.
that's another resource. I'm gonna try to write all these down and put
Yes,
it in.
and I'm happy to send that. I think American Cancer. I made a list of resources, but I just think that if you can get, we both know American Cancer Society is great,
Mhm.
in terms of a go-to for evidence-based information is really good. But whatever your locale is, Google it. If you're not in a big city, but you have access to the internet, look at the MD Anderson Cancer Center. Look at some of their programs. It's called ALAC. It's an acronym: Active Living After Cancer, ALAC. They run different cohorts. They're great leaders in that. And I found that to be very, very helpful and beneficial to me after my cancer, throughout my cancer journey.
Okay. Okay. Definitely. And I'm in the process of creating well, I'm just gonna say a list of resources because there's so
Mhm.
many. And so I just think it'll be really useful for people to just have it where it's easily accessible. So that's in the work. So definitely thank you for sharing those resources. And once again, I know it's been a lot of information, but I hope that for anyone that's listening, or if you know someone that's been recently diagnosed with breast cancer, or even they're not even taking the time to go and do their mammograms, because
Mhm.
National Mammogram Day was the 16th, I believe.
Mhm.
And so make sure that you go and get your mammograms done. There are nonprofit organizations out there that will pay for you to go and get your mammograms done. So there are a lot of resources that can help you. And we got to make sure that we're starting to do self advocacy, taking care of ourselves. Early detection is the key. That's what she said. And there's a lot of information
Yes,
in
saved
here.
my life.
Yes, it definitely
It saved my life.
saved your life, and it saved my life as well. Definitely. So, Dr. Faith, I appreciate you coming
Oh
on Share
yeah.
the Tea Tuesdays.
Well,
I really
thank you so much. This has been great. I love to share this kind of tea.
yes, this is tea of knowledge. Yes, a tea
Yes,
of
the
knowledge.
tea
So
of
I do
knowledge.
appreciate you coming on. And remember, everyone, follow me on Share the Tea with V on all social media channels. I'm on all of them except for the snap of the chat. And remember to be intentional, be insightful, and definitely be impactful. Thank you again, Dr. Faith Foreman-Hays. Blessings to you. I'm so excited for you reaching your 5-year journey, and of course, I'm gonna have to send you something big because
Oh, thank
we're
you. Just continued prayers. That's it. That's all you got to send me.
yes,
But thank you
yes,
so much. And thanks for having me and letting me share a little bit of my story and a little bit of my journey, because it's definitely not over, but I'm in it to win it. So thank you so
yes.
much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, guys. Until then, thanks for following Share the Tea. See you next week. Bye bye.
Telling me to